Hi everybody, and thank you again for your company on Gaffer and Gear. In today's episode, we're going to look at the additional reflectors that are available for the Nanlux 2400B. So the light is sold with the 45, this is the optional 60, and this is the optional 30. Okay, so let's start off with the usual disclaimer. Nanlux are not paying me any money for this episode, but they did supply these reflectors free of charge, and I do get to keep them or sell them at the end of the episode. So technically that is a paid endorsement. All right, so the first thing a lot of people will want to know, or I wanted to know, is these things are big. Can they pack down inside each other and fit into the large carry case that comes with the spot reflector? And the answer is yes. So there's a bit of a system to it I've got to remember. You've got the wide, you have that at the bottom, put the spot or the 30-degree dish on top of that, and the 45-degree fits on top of that. So that will fit in the case. Now when you get them all into the case, it is a little bit of a squeeze at the top, but it will close. Now for some quick brightness stats, just to give you an idea of where these things fit, and to keep it simple, I'm going to talk in percentages. All right, so let's assume first off that you already own one of these and you know how bright it is with the 45-degree reflector. All right, so with the 60-degree reflector, obviously it's not as bright. So it comes in at 69% the brightness of the light with the 45-degree reflector on. And if you're going to use the spot reflector, which is 30 degrees, it comes in at a little bit over double the brightness of using this reflector. So it comes in at 117% brighter. Now let's do some brightness comparisons with an M40 with an RE HMI. Now I sold my M40s years ago, so I actually don't have any M40s to take brightness readings off. So I got the brightness readings off the RE app. So let's start off with flood first. Now the thing to note here is a M40 only floods out to 52 degrees, whereas the 2400 here with this reflector floods out to 60, so it does go wider. Okay, so this with the 60-degree reflector on will come in at 67% the brightness of an M40 that's in full flood. Now let's do a comparison of this with the 30-degree reflector versus an M40 set to 30 degrees. So this comes in at 89% the brightness of an M40 with a matching beam angle. Now let's have a look at the accuracy of the device recognition. Now these readings were taken with a light set to 5600 Kelvin with a neutral green and magenta. In terms of the CCT, the maximum difference between any of the combinations is only 48 Kelvin. In terms of green and magenta, the 60 and the 45 degree are extremely close. Okay, let's start off the testing by having a look at the light with the 60-degree reflector. Now for this test, I've put a light stand in the middle so that we can see if the shadows change across the beam like they do with an M18 or an M40. The brightness is fairly even and consistent across the beam, and there isn't a lot of drop off towards the edges. At a distance of 3 meters, the shadows are pretty ordinary. Now let's take a look at the shadows at a distance of 12 meters. On close inspection, you can see there are 2 shadows, but this is way cleaner than any shadow I've ever got off an M40. Now let's have a look at it through a window at a distance of about 6 meters. I must admit, I am a bit surprised at the quality of the shadows and the textures. It's not as good as you would get out of a good Fresnel, but it's pretty close. Now let's have a look at how it performs over a larger area. And it's a very even, very consistent beam. The one thing to bear in mind, particularly if you're trying to blend the light, is there's a very distinct and sudden edge to the beam. Now let's take a look at the light with the 30-degree reflector attached. And as you can see, it's a very even, very uniformed light beam. Again, I'm using the light stand so that we can gauge the consistency of the shadows across the beam. The shadows are a bit of a mess at 3 meters, but it is a lot better than I expected out of a spot reflector. Now before we look at the shadows at 12 meters, I just want to give you a gauge of the firepower. At a distance of 12 meters, the light starts to become one source. The shadows are not perfect, but they're way better than I was expecting out of a spot reflector. Now let's have a look at the light through a window at a distance of about 6 meters. One criticism you could have of this spot reflector is that 30 degrees isn't a very tight beam, but what I like about it is it's still wide enough to fill a window. To start off with, I'm exposing to the ambient light to give you some idea of the firepower. Compared to the flood reflector, we've definitely lost some texture here. Now let's have a look at how even the beam is over a larger area. Now most spot reflectors are a flood reflector with an intense hotspot, but this is a very contained beam. Now you might have noticed that I haven't mentioned price. I had a quick look online and there's a lot of variation. Also, some companies only sell them as individual items and other companies sell them as a bundle deal. So rather than me giving you the wrong price, just have a look at your local distributor.